Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today for the Singapore International Cyber Week 2023. My name is Charlene. Pleased to be your MC for this morning. Now, of course, this morning we have international panelists who are here to share their insights as well as their knowledge and perspectives on the topic of combating advanced cybersecurity threats amidst changing digital frontier. So today we'll also like to encourage all our guests here with us to simply pose your questions for our discussion by using the Slido. Please scan the QR code as shown on screen right now. Now, in today's interconnected world, cyber threats are evolving rapidly, and cyber defenders need to stay ahead of the game. So advanced threat actors are using diverse and sophisticated techniques, exploiting vulnerabilities in various systems and networks, so including those commonly used in enterprise, cloud, and also Internet of Things and operational technologies environment. So as such, there is an impetus to reflect on the diverse on-defense strategies and also countermeasures to mitigate the risk. And these risks are posed by advanced cyber attackers. So this session aims to shed light on the advanced attack techniques and also their implications for individuals, businesses, and governments. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please join me to welcome our keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Iranga Kagagama, Assistant Secretary for Cyber Infrastructure Risk and Resilience of the Department of Homeland Security, United States of America. Let's give him a big round of applause, please. Mr. Iranga, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. As was mentioned, my name is Iranga Kahangama. I'm with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in the United States. I want to talk to you a little bit today when the panel is called Advanced Threats about some of the newer technologies that the Department of Homeland Security is looking at, particularly the topic of artificial intelligence. I think the topic du jour of everyone these days. Artificial intelligence is a powerful new set of capabilities, and they require standards and policy making in order to harness effectively and responsibly. I think from the Department of Homeland Security's perspective, we look at AI both positively and with an eye towards the threats that they may consume. So we've been taking both a proactive approach in how we leverage these technologies. But first, I want to briefly highlight how we see AI as changing the threat landscape. AI is a particular area of concern as it enables rapid advancement across diverse research fields. It allows competitors to close credibility gaps quickly and can develop pacing challenges to the strength of our innovation. Our homeland security has converged with our national security when we look at artificial intelligence. We remain concerned that generative AI will fuel more sophisticated cyber attacks and closely monitoring new applications of generative AI to manipulate online community, conduct fraudulent activity, including more sophisticated scams, and to increase the scale and accuracy of influence operations online. We look and see AI as a service being offered as software to cybercriminals in order to facilitate these types of crimes as well, essentially creating scams in a box ready for people to use. New AI-enabled cybercrime schemes will also enable cybercriminals to operate at a new scale and complexity that we have not seen before, including with personalized emails and personalized customization to make these more convincing. We are working to combat scams, frauds, and close these potential cyber vulnerabilities in cases of cyber defense using artificial intelligence. While the threat surface may be expanding due to the threats posed by AI, we also need to acknowledge the benefits and the opportunities that exist by leveraging this key technology. We've identified a few key ways in which we can use AI in order to enhance our security posture at the Department of Homeland Security and really for cybersecurity writ large. One, security analyst augmentation. A key issue in cybersecurity is the volume of data that humans must synthesize to protect endpoints of networks. The average security operations analyst team receives over 11,000 alerts a day. These analysts must spend most of their time manually ticketing and triaging these alerts. With AI, we can use AI to address this problem by automating repetitive tasks, such as automatically triaging and ticketing these, so that one can better identify with priorities and the significant threats that they may need to use to defend their networks. Secondly, automated vulnerability management. AI may give malicious actors new tools to detect and exploit vulnerabilities. However, it's important to remember that these tools are also available to cyber defenders. AI-enabled vulnerability discovery can be used by defenders to identify vulnerabilities and address those vulnerabilities proactively. It's important to remember that these tools that are available to the attackers can also be available to the defenders. We also want to use it for automated threat detection and response. AI and machine learning can help defenders classify new adversary patterns. This is a manual process at times, and it requires high levels of precision. Currently, when you're looking at malware detection, they're based off signatures, indicators of compromise. Using AI and machine learning, we can allow these signatures to become analyzed and routinized, so you have a baseline of what normal may look like. Ultimately, we can use these to allow defenders to use these tools to rapidly detect current and new threats on their network and use malware classification in a common machine learning method to combat cybersecurity threats. So AI will drastically alter the landscape, but it's going to augment the tools that we have as cyber defenders to address these threats. We're very excited about that. So as we look beyond what these standard threats for AI are, let me talk to you very briefly about how the US Department of Homeland Security is thinking about AI. We think about it in largely two different buckets. Our own internal use of this to advance our specific mission set, be that in security at the border or drugs or national security, as well as externally, what is the role of the department in facilitating others and helping the country and the world leverage these technologies. So internally, our first guiding principle is that all of our uses of AI will be bound by ethical and responsible use principles. This includes using civil rights and civil liberties experts to analyze how we're using AI in our mission in order to not be biased in how we're using it. This is the utmost priority for the department. In applying those principles, we want to roll out these technologies to make our workforce more efficient. Few people may know, but Department of Homeland Security has 270,000 employees. They have a very critical mission and have many competing priorities. If we can use these tools to make more efficient their work, we're going to leverage them. Whether that means applying AI to baggage and a screening of baggage and goods coming into the country so that we can pick and choose what may be what may be more of a threat and what may be more benign. We're going to use it. We're using it to build LLMs to analyze how fentanyl production can be created from synthetic content. We're using our weapons of mass destruction and our chemical, biological, and radiological experts to identify and work with companies to figure out if these new LLMs are going to be creating protein synthesis and protein sequences that we otherwise don't know about. Can they be leveraged to create new pandemics, new disease, or other biological weapons? These are top of mind for us. When it comes to cybersecurity, we want to promote the active use of AI as well in terms of managing how we are detecting these threats. We want to work with industry to make best practices about how one uses cybersecurity in a SOC. How can we use it to better identify what the priorities are needed for communities? As we move outside of our mission set and work and look with external actors, we also see AI as very critically in DHS's lane. So we intend to use AI as a means to connect with certain communities, particularly critical infrastructure owners and operators. We plan to convene AI experts with the implementers on the critical infrastructure side so that the operators can understand what these technologies can use, and so that AI companies can hear from these owners and operators about what type of guardrails they need, what type of guidance they need about how you can house an AI system in a secure data center, how you can make sure there are guardrails that don't allow for synthetic content to get outside of the purview of critical infrastructure owners. How should critical infrastructure owners and operators think about when to keep a human in the loop about what they're doing? These are all core mission areas that we're trying to push. The final area that we're working with AI and AI companies is on intellectual property theft. These companies, these AI firms, have very precious knowledge. If they don't open source it, it's proprietary knowledge, and it's one that we know adversary and competitors will seek to exploit. We've seen intellectual property theft for decades. This is an even more valuable tool. So we're working with companies to make sure their intellectual property is protected. Likewise, we want to work with people who use AI who may end up having intellectual property, their intellectual property rights violated as a result of something created by AI. And navigating that space so that people can continue to thrive with their own IP is really important to the Department of Homeland Security. So these are just some of the use cases that we are currently thinking through the department's role in AI and the private sector. I think we still are kind of learning as we're going on, as I think many people are, but I do think we have a lot of work underway. We look forward to this rapid pace of technological change. We recognize that it will create disruptions, some good, some bad, and will rapidly increase our connections as a society. By cooperating and moving in a collective fashion, we can shape secure, responsible AI governance. And we look forward at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to working with our international partners to get into a better place for everyone. I thank you for having me today, and I look forward to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iranga. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. While you're waiting for the stage to be ready, let me just share with you the background for the Singapore International Cyber Week. This is organized by the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, and this is one of the Asia Pacific's largest and most established cybersecurity event. And it's indeed pivotal in Singapore's smart nation and digital economy ambition. Into our 8th edition this year, SICW will take place from 16 all the way to today, which happened to be the last day of our event. It takes place right here at the Sands Expo and Convention Center. Now, our theme is building trust and security in the emerging digital order. And this event will bring together global policy makers, industry leaders, and also top academia from across the world to share with us their best practices. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us now commence our panel discussion. Please join me to welcome our very first panelist for the day, Ms. Jacqueline Barr, Assistant Director General, Technical Threats and Visibility, Australian Cybersecurity Centre from Australia. Let's give it a big hand, please. Next, let us welcome Mr. Chua Kwan Sia, Deputy Commissioner of Cybersecurity and Deputy Chief Executive Development, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. Our third panelist today, we have Mr. Jim Allen, Executive Vice President, Booz Allen Hamilton. Let's put our hands together as well for Mr. Stuart Garrick, Law Enforcement Liaison, the Shadow Server Foundation. Last but not least, let's welcome Mr. Andrew Ong, Regional Director Asia from Vectra AI. And ladies and gentlemen, this segment is moderated by Mr. Goh Ing Chun, President Cyber of SC Engineering. Let's welcome Mr. Goh. All right, so handing the time over to our panelists as well as our moderator. Over to you, Mr. Goh.
Thank you. Hope you all can hear me. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the esteemed panelists. So the cybersecurity is a very serious topic, but today we try to make it a bit more fun, right? So let's try to do it. But I'll introduce myself first. I got a lot of gadget, so please send all your questions to the Slido. It's going to be here. Can you see it? Yeah. So let me start by introducing myself. My name is Eng Chun. I'm Chief President Cyber Business in ST Engineering. So ST Engineering is a global innovation technology defense powerhouse with about 26,000 employees. So, but that's all for myself. My life is actually very simple. I only got 3 jobs. I spent about 24 years in the military. And then after that, I went to the startup and we sold the startup, and then I joined ST Engineering back in 2011 until now. So I'll introduce my panelists, then later I will let them probably say something interesting about yourself. Okay. Right. To start off, I'll start off from the lady first. So, is Jackie or Jacqueline?
That's fine, Jackie's great.
Yeah, Jackie's correct. Okay, it's Jackie, and so Jackie leads the Australian Signal Directorate Cyber Visibility Program and the operational team for discovery and detection, malware reverse engineering, hunt active vulnerability assessment, and dynamic defense, including Australia's cyber threat intelligence sharing platform. Okay, and I'll go to Kwan Sia. Okay, I know Kwan Sia for many years, so maybe I may not be able to say things that we
It's okay.
actually,
Yeah.
It's
Or
okay.
you need, should I introduce you? Please go ahead.
So Kwan Sia is the Deputy Chief Executive Development of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, where he leads the effort in master planning, capability development, research of cybersecurity at the national level. He's also the Deputy Commissioner of Cybersecurity, assisting the Commissioner in the investigation of cyber threats and incidents affecting essential services. Now, prior to his appointment at CSA, he was a Senior Director of Information Division and concurrently served as the Chief Digital Officer of DSO National Labs in the Ministry of Defense. And in his former role, he led the team in capability development in areas including cybersecurity, operational research, crypto, artificial intelligence across diverse domains, ranging from sense-making, cyber to robotics. Now, in his role as Chief Digital Officer, he was responsible for leading digitization effort and the governance plans and delivery of digital product policies in DSO. Next, let's welcome Mr. Jim Allen. So, Executive Vice President Jim Allen led the strategic planning of Booz Allen Hamilton National Security Business, setting the direction of National Security Group $3 billion business with a focus of cybersecurity in the intelligence community and other markets. Following 36 years supporting cyber intelligence mission in US and abroad for the National Cybersecurity Agency, NSA, Jim joined Booz Allen to continue pushing the mission forward, and most recently leading the cyber account. Jim led the firm support of clients at NSA, US Cyber Command, and the Armed Forces Cyber Element, in addition to enabling cyber-related business in other government agencies and commercial international market. Next, I'll jump to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart Garrick has worked for the Shadow Server Foundation for over 8 years. Previously, he served 3 years in the UK law enforcement, culminating as a senior investigating officer in the National Crime Agency. As a career detective, he worked primarily on major crime unit, engaged on both proactive and reactive investigation, including many high-profile cybercrime cases as the senior investigator, such as the Dreadix and the Game Over Zeus botnet takedown. So his role now is supporting law enforcement investigation for Shadow Server. He's currently actively engaged in multiple ongoing international cases. He understands the operational challenges and differing evidential restriction and capability across the EU and worldwide. And his focus is always to help law enforcement achieve their intelligence and evidential, wow, it's a very interesting word, evidential needs in a way that they can actually use. Maybe you can explain more about that word.
Okay.
And Mr. Andrew Ong. Andrew Ong is currently the Regional Director Asia for Vectra AI. So he's responsible for expanding and advocate the rapid adoption of network detect and response technology for customer mission-critical environment. Andrew has close to 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, ranging from network security, APT, EDR, XDR, and CTI. So I've hopefully done my dues in introducing all of you, but I still think that we should give you a chance, for the next, probably for 1 minute, for each of you to talk about something interesting about yourself. You can say that I just climbed Nepal, to the base camp in the Himalayas and all this. But maybe you start, again, ladies first, yeah. Jackie. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. It's wonderful to be with you this morning, and thank you for attending this panel session. Yes, I'm fortunate to lead ASD Cyber Threat Intelligence Program, which is really focused on our actor agnostic detection. So how can we bring the exploitation of technologies, focusing on those hacker behaviours to identify malicious activity that is trying to target and disrupt Australia's most critical networks. So we work across our government networks and critical infrastructure. And this is why I think this event is so significant, because for us, it's not only our international partners and the opportunity here to connect, but really working with industry. And I'm very passionate about our public-private partnerships and ensuring that we're all best positioned to address threats that, as we're here to talk about, are continuing to increase in sophistication.
Thanks, Jackie. So we are supposed to say something interesting about ourselves. So I've been working on cybersecurity for over 20, 30 years. But not many people knew that actually I sort of work on this particular area, or I got interested in this when I was in the equivalent of elementary school, primary school. Then you play games, right, if you remember. So and if you play games, you really need to increase your hit points, equivalent, and stuff like that. So you start to understand how games are built. And then this is the genesis of how I got interested in understanding how programs work and stuff, even at the primary or elementary school. And since then, I have been not working on games, but understanding this particular area, and that's where I am right now. So I wear multiple hats previously, and right now I'm working with to make sure that our national security systems, our critical infrastructures, right, our citizens are all well protected, secure, so that we can power a digital economy. And I think that's very important in this particular role. So thanks a lot of colleagues here for coming down to Singapore, making this particular event a very, very successful one. And I look forward to maybe your questions too, please. Jim, please.
Very good, thank you. The moderator has given me a very difficult assignment in telling me to say something about myself that's interesting. I think my wife and children would say there is nothing interesting that I could possibly, share with anyone. What I will say is that I've been doing cyber my entire adult life. So I think I was doing cyber before it was cyber. I started as a U.S. Navy cryptologic officer, spent almost 20 years in government. I've spent almost 20 years in industry. I've taught at the university level. I have supported cyber-related activities in commercial, in government, in U.S. and international, in research. So I've kind of been there, done that. Not that anyone can really say that in a I think a conclusive way with respect to something as large and diverse and diffuse and dynamic as cyber. But what I have learned through those experiences is how important it is to have all those different perspectives. That if we think in ways that are too narrow, we really miss the systemic aspects of what it takes to actually be successful in operating cyber-enabled missions, whether it's in business, in government, or whatever it may be, or in defending those activities and defeating the adversaries who also work in systems. So I don't know if that's very interesting, but to me, it's fundamental, and I think it's fascinating.
So Stuart Garrick, my background is law enforcement, 30 years working as a detective in the UK. I've investigated everything from organised crimes, drugs, contract killings, murders. I've run informants and everything. It wasn't until the last 5 years of my career in policing, I moved into cyber, and I was blown away with it. As far as investigations are concerned, for the real-world crime, the book has been written. There are procedures. Everyone understands the way to investigate a murder, the steps you have to go through. Cyber completely transforms the challenge for law enforcement around the globe, and I found it fascinating. Every case is an evolution on what's gone before. It is a step forward. It is completely alien to most law enforcement officers who don't come from a technological background. And when I retired back in 2015, I was lucky enough to be able to step into a non-profit organisation and continue investigating cybercrime and helping law enforcement around the globe trying to grapple with this area. The internet allows crime to scale at a pace that it offers complexity you just don't see elsewhere in investigations. And then you overlay that with different procedures, different legislations, different jurisdictions, different time zones, and you'll have your criminal in one country, your crime in a dozen other time zones, a dozen other countries. How do you tie all that together and ever have a hope of achieving anything? Which is why arrests are so infrequent and why prevention is so important. So I don't know if that counts as interesting, but all I can tell you is I love cybercrime because it is the biggest challenge I've ever had to do in my professional career.
Andrew.
Thanks. So I'm Andrew. I'm the Regional Director representing Vector AI. I was very fortunate over my last 20 years of career. I was almost at the forefront of learning different technology. And one of my roles is actually really to break that down, to share with the community, to share with everybody about different technology and probably more in layman terms. We were having an earlier conversation about the recent buzz about AI and stuff. And at the exhibition floor, we were also sharing that. And one of the fun facts that we were discussing is everybody claim AI, and there are different algorithms and stuff. And one of the very interesting algorithms that we always talk about is unsupervised machine learning, right? A lot of people talks about that. Everybody says it takes 10, 14. Some say probably the more data it is, the better it gets. But a fun fact that we try to break it down to why there needs to be a minimum 10 days, right? Just to share, is the fact that today, if you're going to consume any data, there is a sliding 10 days window is for you to observe 2 dips, so that the machine itself or the learning will then be able to observe that, hey, the 2 dips will tell me when it's a work week, right? But again, not many people can translate down to share with the community, and I think it's important that today cyber can be actually shared more simply so that people can appreciate and apply it, right? So part of my role really is just to really share about what AI, what technology can bring, and how we can actually help the blue team, the defenders, better defeat the attackers.
Well, thank you to all the panelists. It's all very interesting. And I can kind of now relate that actually I started cyber way earlier based on Guan Xia's experience. I don't know how many of you remember the Atari computer that have the games that is actually in the cartridge. So it's very expensive at that point in time. Okay, oops, I just let go my age. So like
You are clearly of a certain
40
vintage.
years ago type. So we crack it, among the students we crack it, and then we download it on the floppy disk, 5.5 and 1/4 floppy disk, and then after that distribute among each other, and then start playing a game. So we buy one, and then many people share. So that's probably my first step into cybersecurity. Okay, coming back to the panelists. So thank you very much. I think while the question is still coming on, so today we are probably going to talk about centered about dynamic threat landscape, and then our strategies for maintaining a kind of like how do we maintain a proactive stance in the face of all this challenge. Hopefully, in the process of which we can discuss both the challenges that digital landscape is faced, is putting a lot of challenge onto cybersecurity, and then what as defender we can do about it. So okay, it's coming in. But I'll start off with one question that probably all of you I can pick your brain on this particular question. So what development do you observe in the digital landscape, and how do you anticipate these changes that will benefit or impact all the businesses? And then if you can also share what are the current trends in the cyber threat landscape that actually demands our attention, and what are the concerns that we should have, and how do we deal with it. So anybody can start. I have a rule. If anybody start, the person on the left will continue.
I'll happily go first.
Left, you go around.
Yeah,
Okay, Stuart. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, the first question is very generous, I'll just say, because this is exactly what I've just said, in the fact that law enforcement around the globe are all struggling with this. They tend to be under-resourced. They tend to be about 5 to 10 years behind the curve in the technology they actually have in-house, because they're paid from the public purse. And they are not ever going to be at the cutting edge of technology. They're never ever going to be right at the forefront, where frankly a lot of the criminals actually are. They're the ones who have virtually unlimited resources, can buy and use any technology they want to develop whatever it is, whether it is an AI solution to enhance their criminal gain, or whether it is wider and more efficient spamming botnets. One of the big cases, big problems we've got at the moment is the prevalence of VPNs, criminal VPNs, where you can basically just pop out of any IP address anywhere on the planet, because there is a botnet of millions of mobile phones and computer devices that any criminal can choose to use and appear to be committing their crime from anywhere in the world. These are really hard things for cybersecurity to deal with. So one of the reasons we don't get many arrests and many criminals brought to justice is because it is such a global problem. The criminals are infrequently in the country where the crime happens, and that's by design. Criminals are sensible enough not to commit crimes on their front doorstep. The other is the fact that we have incompatible nation-state interactions. So there are certain nation-states that will not extradite people, will not act on intelligence, will not arrest people. So the best you can do is either charge them remotely or hope that they travel and pick them up when they travel. Recent world events mean a lot of cyber criminals aren't traveling at the moment internationally. You can use sanctions or things like this, but these are heavyweight things to do that take a lot of power and processing to get to a point where you would actually achieve anything. So it's a very slow process. It involves a lot of liaison. It involves trying to break down silos, because one criminal will commit crimes in a dozen different countries. Each one will have their own investigations with their own police forces at different possessions of progress in the case. How do you coordinate that? Who's in charge of them all? There is no world police. So it's always, always, always going to be very, very difficult. And actually one of the reasons that Interpol is so important for trying to coordinate that and balance that out. And indeed Europol for the sort of European group as well. They both have very important places to play. So the challenge is immense, and the resourcing for law enforcement generally is never going to be at the cutting edge, because we pay for it from our taxes, and I don't know if anyone here wants to pay more taxes. But generally across the world, the situation is none of us want to pay too much tax. So we are where we are. So we have to think of other ways of doing it. On the question of AI, yes, I'm concerned about AI and the way it's going to give the asymmetry advantage even more into the hand of criminals unless we develop strategies to deal with it. But personally, I'm actually also really concerned about the fact we're not even doing the basics right now. We're not even securing the perimeters with the information that's available for us here and now. And whilst we're all worrying about what might happen tomorrow, we should also be worrying about today and doing more to protect our own estates, our own networks, and try and keep them away from us, whoever us happens to be. Because at the moment, frankly, globally, we're making it far, far too easy for criminals to pop our IoT devices, to compromise our networks, to get into our hospitals, to ransom us, just because we're not really paying attention to the technology we've already got.
Stuart, thank you.
Thank you. I think I would add to that in terms of we have to think about what's the intent of the cyber criminal, and so we kind of flip that around from the traditional law enforcement. Cyber criminals want to monetize their incident. That's the game they're in. So we have to think about how can we drive more costs so we take the revenue out of their activity. And so there's multiple approaches to that. As we said, it's around good defense across any of those hacker techniques. Will mitigate any kind of, a malicious activity in terms of whether it's state actor or cyber criminals. So one, it's about driving the cost in terms of making our networks more resilient and more costly for the actor to do that. It's also looking about disruption. So again, how can we take the money out of that? And that's where there's some fantastic international efforts in terms of, hitting back at in terms of how they make money out of that. And so it's removing the reputation, removing these syndicates, how they have malware as a service. So again, it's driving the cost there. And thirdly, importantly, is sharing that intelligence. So we are acting at speed so others can take countermeasures again so that they are not able to monetize their activity across all of our networks.
All right, thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
And we just maybe build on this. I think one of the trends is that you can already see is all this ransomware, hacking for reputations and whatnot. So I think it has gotten very, very prevalent. It's something that clearly impact the business. So what we have done is actually to make sure that we set up a counter-ransomware task force in Singapore, looking in exactly like what are the things that you mentioned, strengthening the defenses of businesses, especially those that are high risk, that are very, very subjected to such a high-profile ransom attacks. And then disrupting the second pillar, disrupting the ransomware businesses itself, to make sure that it is not profitable for such organization. And the third pillar is actually supporting the recovery of such businesses who, unfortunately, if they have been impacted. And finally, and a very, very important pillar, working with international partners, the fourth pillar, to make sure that we could continue to address some of these problems, because they are going to transcend a lot of boundaries, and that's where the law enforcement entities will come in. So I thought maybe I'll just share something on that part as well.
I'll follow just briefly. I think the way that Jackie and others have framed this really is an economics problem, right? That the adversary, they're in business. They want to lower their costs, and they want to increase their return on their investment. And so we want to change the economic proposition for them. One of the things, though, that I see that makes that difficult is that our economics are really going sort of in the wrong direction too often. Stuart spoke to some of the limitations that law enforcement has. That's true also for network defenders and others that are trying to protect intellectual property or networks. Mm-hmm. One, I guess, phenomenon that I've struggled with for a long time is that I think we really spend a lot of time on what I would consider to be remedial kind of activities, that we are spending resources on things that we already have solved. We already know how to do these things. We've already identified vulnerabilities. We've already identified threat vectors. 80% of ransomware attacks are made against vulnerabilities that we already know how to patch. So I think part of this economic proposition is that we can't afford to waste resources on remediation of things that really have already been solved. It steals resources away from things that we don't know how to do. It steals resources from things that we really need to spend more time, more attention, develop more capabilities. And so we've got this, I think, tyranny of response, right? That we're trying to react to crimes or other adversary behaviors in ways that are not efficient, right? And so I think we need to spend more time, thought, resources in getting everyone to do their part, everyone meaning systems owners, operators, and not expect that it's going to be the police or law enforcement or the intelligence community or the government or it's someone else's problem. We need to make it everyone's problem so that they take responsibility for getting their defenses where they need to be so that those other organizations can spend their resources on things that are their comparative advantage, right? Things that, that those users and operators really can't be expected to do for themselves. But until we get that imbalance fixed, I think the advantage economically goes to the adversary.
Yeah, probably to share, I think on the conversation around cybercrimes, I think what often happens is that we are seeing the incident and the aftermath. I think one of the biggest challenge for the defenders is always the investigation part and the evidence gathering, because the really nation state or dedicated threat actors, they will definitely be able to hide their intent and their approach. And that's always very hard for then, the defenders to always look back and say, hey, they may be cooperating cross-territory, cross-nationality. And that's always very hard and requires on a global scale for different, homeland agencies to be able to work together, right? And then to be able to pin down, where the attackers are really coming from. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen across the landscape, right? And on the topic where, how can we better use AI for the blue team or for the cyber defenders, is that I think we all need to collaborate and then understand that the threat actors, again, sometimes they do not act alone. And in today's current state of cybersecurity operations, a lot of the current technologies are pretty much generating a lot of noise. And to our keynote speaker, Mr. Iranga's point, is that in terms of the alerts today that we're receiving, the typical human analyst needs to probably investigate or address 11,000 alerts in a single week, right? And that's really tough. So how AI can really come in is to really help to do the correlation and potentially the noise suppression aspect, to then understand that, if today you're handling a single alert by itself, that doesn't require human to investigate. Because attackers today needs to go through a series of stages to land to their intent. And if we use AI to be able to correlate and suppress the single detections, but if we correlate that today, if we understand the various stages that they're going after, then the human should actually be intercepting at the mid-game, where it should be a series of different detection that is being triggered, and then the human will actually get involved. Rather than chasing the single incident, right, we should be able to use AI to better operationalize how we are addressing the threats.
So it's very interesting because coming from a business point of view, in other crime, it's very simple. Somebody go to the house, stole something, you report to the police go after the thief, right? But in cybercrime, sometimes is a little bit more complicated. The first investigation was whether you lock a door, and sometimes even the homeowner get punished, because they breached GDPR, they actually, all the personal information is being leaked. And then I guess there must be a balance. So whoever reported, they must have certain assurance that the authority is doing something about it. At the same time, of course, helping the business to better themselves in terms of cyber security, cyber defense posture. So I think it's something that we've got to do a little bit more in that aspect. So a lot of questions are coming in. I'll probably just want to start, the highlighted one, start with the first one. It's right in front of you. So taking up the point from Stuart, where cybercrimes are conducted by VPN, can network provider globally be legally bound to investigate crimes happening from the network since the hacker breached the rules of using the network in the first place by conducting illegal activities there? So
as I brought it up, shall I go first?
Yeah. Right.
I wish globally we would be in the position where we could say, here's a great law and everyone's going to apply it globally. It just isn't going to happen, unfortunately. But it's a really interesting question for me because it alludes to another threat that we've got, which is the possible breakdown of the internet as a whole. We could get to a position where countries would either de-peered from the rest of the internet or extract themselves from the internet, and it ceases to be what it was envisioned to be, a global resource for all of humanity to do all the wonderful things it can do. And one of the things that I personally fear is we could actually get into an inadvertent position where we start fracturing the internet as different countries either decide to take themselves absolutely out of it and deprive their citizens of the ability to communicate globally, or other countries decide to collectively come together and push people out of it. And I really hope we never get to that position. However, I don't want to be Mr. Doomsayer, there is a positive side at the moment. We're starting to see a shift towards things like the Cyber Norms Declaration from the United Nations. We're actually getting consensus on what good behaviour looks like in this space, how citizens should be behaving. And whilst it isn't bound by law, and it is toothless in that respect, it is like the advice from your grandma. You don't want to go against your advice from your grandma. She knows what she's talking about, and she gives you good advice. So it's setting standards that laws in different countries around the globe can then aspire to try and accord with. Even with the recent declarations from the Red Cross talking about the actions of cyber criminals in war zones and what's an acceptable target and what's absolutely not an acceptable target. This is a slight shift in society to push people towards better behaviour, which hopefully is going to be taken up universally. Unfortunately, I don't think legislation only really works at a national level or in a small group of countries. It takes a very, very long time. And by the time legislation came in to bind all of those network owners, unless they're doing it voluntarily already, we'll be on to the next 10th risk down the road by the time that actually comes around, and it'll just be playing catch up.
Yep, probably also to add, in terms of the network providers, whether they can be legally bound to investigate crimes. I think, again, to my earlier point, is that the well-organized threat actors that is executing the cyber crimes, they can be going out after identity theft or using public Wi-Fi that they are just logging in as a guest, executing the crimes. And then again, the network providers are all just transit providers of the data, right?
I would say, sorry, the one thing I should have said is I do believe that network providers should have a duty of care to their customers.
Sure.
And to just say I only provide transit, I don't accept that. I think if you're earning money from a customer base, you have a duty of care to your customers. And I personally think that's a cop-out when network providers say, I just provide transit. I don't have to worry about my customers.
Yeah. So I think the other aspects that I'm seeing is that in terms of the threat actor today, assuming the persona or the identity of a different individual, and when they're executing the attacks,
yeah.
And when those incidents do happen, again, when you're trying to find the evidence and go after actual attackers, that's really hard on the defenders.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just shift the focus a little bit. Jackie, this probably to add on for you to pick your brain on is really as a frontliner in cyber defense. So with the kind of challenges that we are faced, that's confronting us, how do you think the cyber operation will adapt along the way?
So I guess we've been talking about the increasing sophistication of threats and attacks. I think with that also comes great opportunity. So with the ability of AI and ML empowering my teams to be able to now, the raft of telemetry that's coming in, and we're talking, for me, across multiple networks, but what about even an own organisation with potentially their own small network defender team? how can they continue to kind of get on the frontier of this? For us, it's also, to come back to even continuous learning and development is key, engaging with industry groups, researching about these threats so that they can build those detections as well. But also when we seek to gain that maximum coverage of our networks, identifying where those crown jewels are. Have we actually got telemetry and data coming back to those detection teams so they even have a chance of being able to identify that malicious activity? But again, coming back to where we have, automation ML, it's, quite exciting. And as we said before, it's about we need to focus more on that anomalous detection. So how can we, for us, we're really looking at those hacker behaviours, because if people know about the pyramid of pain, that's something that's harder for a hacker to change. IOCs are perishable, but if we're looking at that anomalous activity, what doesn't look quite right, that's not the processes potentially of how the system should operate. We have more of a chance of being to get onto those threats. And for us, we're more concerned now beyond espionage and into those disruptive threats that we see that are targeting our critical infrastructure. We've seen that in Greece where, gas networks are being taken out. We've seen that in Russia, Ukraine, about where we have actors who are sitting dormantly waiting for that disruptive threat. And I just want to highlight that because we've talked a lot about cybercrime, which is very noisy. It's go in and grab, because again, the quicker they can do that, the quicker they can, make their money. But for other entities that are really about ensuring those essential services, that is where I think we're looking at that sophisticated behaviour. And, the Five Eyes came out with our joint advisory on living off the land techniques that we saw against targeting US critical infrastructure. As we know in this room, living off the land has been around for over 10 years. It's a known techniques, but it brings to bear, this is where we need to focus to ensure again that collectively we're focusing really on that disruptive, on that threat. That's where the advanced actors are, and how do we really focus on anomalous detections.
Thank you. I'll just probably want to address two more aspects to this same topic. One is, of course, from a policy point of view. I think, Kwan Sia, you probably want to share with us your thought. Because there's activities that we can do within the organization, collaboratively, internationally, but from a policy point, maybe you want to add on. Before Jim, I will come to you for the strategy part.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess really, if you look at from the sophisticated threats perspective, right? I think you probably have to frame the problem in terms of national security threats at one level, and then the other category will be the public run-of-the-mill kind of threats. So at the national security level, I think this will be your critical infrastructures and stuff like that. So at the policy level, I think in Singapore, many of you are aware that we would have the Cybersecurity Act that allows the commissioner or the deputy commissioner to make sure that our infrastructures are well protected. They conform to a certain set of guidelines, a set of rules. We call that the Cybersecurity Code of Practice. Right? So we are now in our second version of Code of Practice. It is actually more intent-based. That means what it takes for you to be able to deliver the kind of essential services and stuff. So that's one track that we have. And I think it has gone, just one point to maybe follow up from what Eng Chun mentioned just now. It is interesting that if you look at the Cybersecurity Act, if you have a particular incident, actually there's no fine, right? But if you have an incident and you don't report it, that's where the fine comes in. So really it's an enlightened approach to make sure that we encourage the protection and defense as well as reporting, unfortunately, if there is any of such incidents. Right? Then the other part will be actually the rest of the non-critical infrastructure group. And I think this is the part that a lot of work has to be done. in terms of if you ask me from the cyber defense perspective or cyber protection perspective. Arguably, I think this is literally lifting the masses, and that is a very tough thing. So we at the policy level, initiatives we have actually implemented the CyberSafe program to make sure that we let businesses take the ownership of actually protecting their assets. And we do that in various forms in terms of toolkits to help them guide in terms of attaching people. CISO has a service and stuff. So that, depending on the nature of your business, you could go for the more basic tier, cyber health, to the more advanced tier, which is cyber trust. Right? So this is, I think, a tailored approach that we put in some measures to help our businesses, at least based in Singapore, to strengthen the protection mechanism.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we see with some of our clients who are owners operators of critical infrastructure, thinking of one very large utility in North America that provides electrical, water, and gas services. Sometime over the recent past, they decided for business reasons that they would connect their OT and their IT, right? So their business systems and their operating systems had been segregated. Well, they're not anymore. And the reason that they're not is because there were good business reasons to bring them together, right? So the decisions that were made were around efficiency, around cost management, around profitability, around responsiveness, around all those things, right? Makes a lot of sense, right? If you don't have the larger context and thinking about what does that mean in terms of the risk that you are creating, not accepting, that you're creating as part of that bargain, right? That you're gaining something without any consideration or really even awareness that you're putting in jeopardy your entire enterprise, right? And so I think this goes to the point that Conseil made about that responsibility. One of the things that we counseled that particular client was that really should be a board-level decision, right? And so when you think about the decision rights, how did that happen? They're not really sure, right? They're not really sure at what point or by whom those decisions were made. They're following corporate guidance and priorities. They're running a business. They're doing things that they are incentivized to do. But cybersecurity was not really part of that calculus, right? And so I think it's an important point about the responsibility of these owner-operators of critical infrastructure. They have a larger responsibility, and I don't envy them. You know, they're in tough businesses. They're making very difficult decisions, but getting that right, getting the decision rights aligned, getting the authorities and the accountability aligned is extremely important. The other thing that's very important, that's elusive, it's kind of a paradox, because in cyber, you know, we've got a lot of data, right? We talked about it on this panel, right? We've got alerts, we got telemetry, we got all kind of stuff. What we don't have is sense making. What we don't have is any real understanding of what the heck's going on here. We have these transactional incidents or anomalies or alerts or events, but we tend to lack awareness of the situation. What's actually occurring here? What are we seeing? What is this data telling us? And in point of fact, I would argue that even though we have a lot of data we don't have enough of the right kind of data. We don't have data that really informs us in ways that allow us to make good decisions that are situationally relevant, right? So I think when we consider critical infrastructure in particular, our moderator yesterday gave a very good presentation, and I hope it's maybe it's recorded, but there are myths that have sort of grown up over decades in critical infrastructure industries, and I would argue it goes beyond critical infrastructure. And maybe we just need to include in critical infrastructure advanced manufacturing. Advanced manufacturing, I would argue, really should be considered part of critical infrastructure in some, at least in some specific cases. But I think the culture, it's sort of a fail-safe culture, right? That if there's a problem, then the system is designed to fail safe, right? So the premium is on keeping the infrastructure up and operating, because if there's a problem, it's going to fail safe. And so the damage that will be done really is loss of revenue, loss of service, things that are, not desirable, but not necessarily seen as being catastrophic, right? It's a myth, right? And it's a very deep-seated cultural proclivity, I think, in critical infrastructure that is a big part of the challenge in really addressing, I think, these very serious and I think growing threats that we have to our societies and economies.
Jim, thank you. Suddenly they're just fresh. I got only 3 minutes left.
Whoa.
Well, I guess, it's a case where we all want the environment to be safe, but we also want to shift, to get that is a tall order. There's no more cybercrime, no more cyber attack. I think that's not going to happen. I think more importantly is that the organization and business must feel safe and confident to implement solutions and protect themselves, with the support from the authority and of course with agencies that can help them should anything actually go wrong. So with 3 minutes left, and then with still many questions coming, and if you group them together, if you look at it, it's about AI, and then of course there's always this concern with AI, with generative AI, with how does it help the attacker. But I was thinking, do the attacker really need to get there when there are so many opportunities? They still, it's like habits, right? If I can find somebody, some targets that's actually easy to attack, why would I go and invest into something very complicated? But on the reverse side, as a defender, I was thinking that because we're always short of people, short of talent, and we hear it you heard it all the time, I think maybe just the last for all of you to share, how do you see AI, generative AI, being used to actually help the defender? Anybody can start.
Yeah, I think Jacqueline has covered one quite extensively just now as Jim about the use of AI to support sense making, if I may just use the word. So rather, but I saw one question over here, which is actually does have quite a few votes about the threats to the integrity of AI-based system. And I thought I would like to maybe just share a little bit if you're okay with that, which is actually something that does keep me awake, other than age, of course. So I think this is important. So we have some folks, for example, in one of the university, in the local university, where they have been funded, I think last year or the year before, to work on trusted AI. I think that's important. But more than that, I think it is also how do we develop a set of principles of how AI should be used we spoke about national security systems, as well as critical infrastructure, and finally the third category, safety related system. I think coming out with a set of principles to make sure that we understand this, and that the developers of AI products also understand this. I think this is I personally think that is something that perhaps in the next 1 to 2 years' time, we have an opportunity to get this right. And if you can get this right, I think it will give a lot of people more confidence, even as the research is going on, but some of these principles could be developed upfront. I don't think we want a case where it's like what happened in the OT realm, where the early days of OT products were developed more from the full functionality perspective, and security was not baked in, right? So, well, I thought maybe I share my view on this, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie.
Oh, it's like,
It's okay, I think.
okay. We've been given an extension.
Oops,
so we're
0
gonna be
minutes.
zero flashing. But yeah, I think you know, in my previous remarks about, you know, obviously, you know, AI, as we've been talking this week, the challenges and the opportunities. I'd like to go with an optimist and some comments around that AI can be for good. And I think if we think about the iceberg analogy, a lot of it's sitting underneath. Does AI provide the defender the opportunity to see more of the iceberg underneath? And as I said, to be able to get onto the frontier of these attacks. But also see the network that they're trying to defend. But importantly, we can focus about defense, but it's also about making our resilience. And I think we've got a big effort to do in terms of making, you know, addressing still those public vulnerabilities that we see. You know, I think 51% are exploited within 2 weeks and 21% within the first hour. So to the point of, you know, we also need to make it harder for these attackers.
Thank you.
I think I would just say the challenge is for us to imagine things that right now we can't do, right? We're conditioned to sort of think about how to use AI to improve our current paradigm. That's going to change, right? It's either going to change by our choice or by somebody else's choice. And so I think the real challenge for us is to reimagine what we do and how we do it. Rather than to just limit ourselves to using AI to improve the way we do what we already do.
I would say there's obviously a lot of excitement. There's a lot of fear about AI at the moment, but whatever there is, there's no way we're putting this toothpaste back in the tube. It is there. It's going to be a thing. The thing we've talked a lot about IOCs and protecting networks. The bit that I think we haven't talked so much about is where AI will interact directly with the human being. And the biggest losses in business are from business email compromise and phishing attacks and that sort of thing. And that's the sort of thing that generative AI is going to enhance and is going to make better phishing emails and things like this. So a business opportunity perhaps for someone, an AI to detect AI. If we can find some way of automatically detecting that is an email that's been generated using generative AI, we actually may have a tool against that sort of thing. I'm afraid that's way beyond my brain cells to come up with that one.
I think AI is just a technology enabler for humans. I think at the root of everything, I think it's about collaboration. It's about intelligence sharing, threat information. I think that's important for the blue team to collaborate closer, right? And that's how you can really, be able to then put up any fights or even have any chance of then defeating the adversaries.
Thank you. So we ran out of time. In fact, we overran the time. Yeah. So thank you, panelists, for all your insights. I'm sure this topic is a very interesting topic. We can go on for another few more hours. So can we all join me? Put our hands together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all our panelists for the wealth of experience and insight shared with us. And also a big round of applause for our moderator, Mr. Goh Eng Chun. Thank you. Please be seated. And next up, we also like to thank all the audience for your active participation, for the engaging questions. Please give yourself a big round of applause. Thank you. Now, I know this topic is extremely intriguing and interesting. Should you like to rewatch this again, it is available immediately over the YouTube, so you can watch it at your convenience. And do note our next session is titled Cyber Multilateralism and the Race Against Change, Affirming the UN's Relevance. This will commence right here at 11 a.m. So see you then. Thank you.